The cold metal walls of the Zephyrian ship seemed to press closer as Vera 9 walked down the long hallway. Her footsteps made soft sounds on the smooth floor, each step bringing her closer to the room where her fate would be decided. She knew what was coming. Everyone on the ship knew what happened to females like her. Vera 9 was too big. That was her crime, her shame, her failure. While other Zephyrian females grew to the perfect size for creating new life, her body had grown beyond the limits. She stood almost twice as tall as the others, her skin thick and solid where theirs was thin and able to change. She could not shift her body like they could. She could not become the soft, flowing form needed to make babies. In Zephyrian society, a female who could not reproduce was not really a female at all. She was broken, useless, a mistake that needed to be fixed or removed. The doors to the council chamber opened with a quiet hiss. Inside, 12 mothers sat in a circle on raised platforms. Their bodies glowed with a soft blue light, a sign of their fertility and power. At the center of the circle stood an empty space where Vera 9 was meant to stand and hear her judgment. She walked into the circle and stood straight, keeping her head high even though her heart was breaking. The mothers looked down at her with faces that showed no emotion. She had known some of these females since she was young. They had watched her grow, had hoped she would be normal, had tried to help her when it became clear she was not. "Hi, Mother," Saren Prime spoke first. Her voice was musical, like water flowing over stones, but her words were cold and final. "Vera 9 of the lower chambers, you have lived among us for 23 cycles. You have eaten our food, breathed our air, and taken up space meant for those who can serve the continuation of our people. You have been tested, treated, and prayed over. Nothing has worked. Your body remains unsuitable for the sacred duty of reproduction." Vera 9 said nothing. There was nothing to say. Everything Saren Prime said was true. Another mother, Kayla 7, leaned forward. Her voice was softer but no less certain. "You are not evil, child. You are not cruel or selfish. But you are incomplete. A Zephyrian female who cannot create life is like a star that gives no light or a flower that bears no fruit. You serve no purpose in our society." "The council has made its decision," Saren Prime continued. "You will be given supplies for 7 days and placed in an escape pod. You will be taken to the drift zone where you can live out your remaining time in peace, away from those you cannot serve." The drift zone. Everyone knew what that meant. It was a region of space, filled with asteroids and debris, far from any planet or station. It was where the Zephyrians sent their outcasts to die alone. They called it mercy, giving the unwanted ones a place to live their final days without burdening the healthy population. Vera 9 finally spoke, her voice steady despite the fear growing in her chest. "I understand. I accept the judgment of the council." What else could she say? That she wanted to live? That she had value beyond her ability to make babies? That she had feelings and dreams and hopes just like them? None of that mattered. In their world, her body was her only worth, and her body had failed. 2 guards stepped forward, females who were smaller than Vera 9, but carried weapons that could stop her if she tried to resist. She did not resist. She walked with them through the ship's corridors, past the living quarters where families raised their children, past the work areas where useful citizens contributed to society, past the medical centers where the fertile females received care during their reproductive cycles. Other Zephyrians stopped to watch her pass. Some looked sad, some looked relieved. A few young ones stared with wide eyes, perhaps wondering if they too might someday be found lacking and sent away. The escape pod was small but functional. It had a bed, basic food supplies, water recycling equipment, and air for several days. There was also a viewing window so she could see the stars during her final journey. The guards helped her inside and checked the systems one last time. "The pod will take you to the drift zone," one guard explained. "After that, you will be on your own. The pod has emergency signals if you change your mind and wish to end things quickly." Vera 9 nodded. She understood. If the loneliness and hopelessness became too much, she could activate a signal that would cause the pod's life support to shut down. It would be fast and painless. The guard sealed the pod door. Through the thick window, Vera 9 could see the loading bay of the ship that had been her home for her entire life. Then the bay doors opened, revealing the star-filled darkness of space. Her pod was pushed out into the void. She watched the Zephyrian ship grow smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light among the thousands of stars. For the first time in her life, she was completely alone. Far away on a human research ship called the Aurora, Captain Jake Morrison was studying the readings from his sensor array. His crew had been watching the Zephyrian fleet for several weeks, learning about their culture and technology. The humans were curious about these alien beings who seemed so different from themselves. "Captain," called Dr. Lisa Chen from her workstation, "I'm picking up something unusual. It looks like a small vessel has separated from the main Zephyrian ship." Jake moved to look at her screen. "Could be a scout ship or a supply run." "I don't think so, sir. The trajectory is all wrong. It's heading toward the asteroid field, and the power signature is too small for a crewed mission." Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez looked up from her communications post. "Sir, I've been monitoring Zephyrian transmissions. From what I can understand, they just held some kind of trial or judgment ceremony." Jake frowned. "You think they're banishing someone?" "It's possible. Many species have traditions of exile for criminals or outcasts." Dr. Chen enhanced the image on her screen. "The pod is very small. If someone is in there, they don't have much in the way of supplies." Jake stared at the screen, watching the tiny pod drift toward the dangerous asteroid field. His training told him not to interfere with alien customs. First contact protocols were clear about respecting other species' internal affairs. But his conscience told him something different. "Sir," Dr. Chen said quietly, "based on the pod's speed and trajectory, whoever is in there will reach the asteroid field in about 6 hours. The chances of survival in that region are very low." Jake made his decision. "Rodriguez, get me a secure channel to the shuttle bay. Chen, keep tracking that pod. Williams, prep the medical bay for a possible alien patient." "Sir," Rodriguez said carefully. "Are we really going to interfere with what might be a legitimate cultural practice?" Jake looked at his crew. All of them young and dedicated. All of them far from home on a mission to learn about the galaxy and humanity's place in it. He thought about the values that had sent them into space in the first place. If we see someone in trouble and we can help, we help. That's what makes us human. Prep the shuttle. We're going after that pod." The crew exchanged glances but began following orders. They trusted their captain, and they knew that sometimes doing the right thing meant taking risks. In her pod, Vera 9 watched the asteroids grow larger through her window. She felt strangely calm. Her life had been decided for her from the moment her body began growing wrong. At least now, in these final hours, she was free from the judgment and disappointment of others. She did not know that help was coming. She did not know that somewhere in the darkness, creatures she had never seen were preparing to risk their own safety for hers. She did not know that her story was just beginning. The human shuttle moved carefully through the asteroid field. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the pilot seat, his hands steady on the controls as he guided the small ship between the floating rocks. Behind him, Dr. Lisa Chen watched the readings on her scanner, tracking the alien escape pod that was drifting deeper into the dangerous area. "There," Chen pointed at her screen. "The pod is caught between 2 large asteroids. It looks like it's stuck." Jake could see the small pod through the shuttle's front window. It was dark and silent, spinning slowly as it bounced between the rocky surfaces. He could not tell if anyone was still alive inside. "Life signs?" he asked. Chen checked her instruments. "Very faint, but yes, someone is in there and they're still breathing." Jake activated the shuttle's tractor beam and carefully pulled the pod free from the asteroids. The beam held the small craft steady as they moved away from the dangerous rocks and back toward the Aurora. "Rodriguez, contact the ship," Jake ordered. "Tell them we're coming back with a passenger and to have the medical bay ready." Inside the escape pod, Vera 9 was barely conscious. The air was getting thin and her body was shutting down to conserve energy. She had accepted that she would die here among the cold rocks, far from anyone who might care. The gentle vibration that told her something was pulling her pod felt like a dream. When she saw lights outside her window, bright and steady unlike the distant stars, she thought her mind was playing tricks on her. When she heard sounds from outside the pod, mechanical sounds like tools working on metal, she was sure she was dreaming or dying or both. The pod shook, and then there was a loud hiss as the door opened. Air rushed in, warmer and richer than what was left in her pod. Strange faces appeared in the doorway, faces unlike any she had ever seen. They had small eyes and flat features, with skin that was pink or brown instead of the pearl colors of her people. "Easy there," said a voice in a language she did not understand. The sounds were rough and simple compared to the musical speech of the Zephyrians. "We're here to help." Vera 9 tried to speak, but could only make weak sounds. The strange beings were much smaller than her, but they moved with confidence and skill. They attached devices to her body that seemed to read her vital signs. They put a mask over her face that gave her cleaner air to breathe. One of them, a female with dark hair, spoke to the others in their alien language. Vera 9 could hear concern in the voice even though she could not understand the words. These creatures, whatever they were, seemed worried about her condition. They moved her carefully from the pod to a larger ship. The gravity was different, here, lighter than what she was used to, and the air smelled strange. Everything was made of metal and plastic instead of the living materials her people used for their ships. They placed her on a soft surface in a room filled with medical equipment. Some of the devices looked familiar, but others were completely alien to her. The beings worked around her, checking readings and adjusting settings, talking to each other in quick, efficient bursts. Hours passed. Vera 9 drifted in and out of consciousness, aware that the strange beings were taking care of her but not sure why. In her weakened state, she sometimes forgot where she was and expected to see the familiar faces of her own people. Instead, she saw these odd creatures with their flat faces and small bodies, always watching her with what looked like concern. When she finally woke up fully, she was alone, except for one of the beings. This one was male, she thought, based on his size and the sound of his voice. He was sitting in a chair next to her bed, reading something on a small device. "Hello," he said when he saw her eyes open. This time somehow she could understand him. There must be a translation device working now. "What are you?" she asked, her voice weak but clear. "We're humans," the male said. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison. You're safe now aboard our ship." "Why did you save me?" Vera 9 asked. It was the same question she had asked the council, but for the opposite reason. They had cast her out because she was useless. Why would strangers risk themselves for someone they did not even know? Jake leaned forward in his chair. "Because you needed help and we could provide it. That's reason enough." Vera 9 stared at him. In her world, everything had a purpose, a reason, a cost, and benefit. No one did anything without expecting something in return. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing," Jake said simply. "We want you to get better. We want you to be safe. Beyond that, it's up to you." Over the next few days, Vera 9 slowly regained her strength. The humans brought her food that was strange, but nutritious. They checked on her regularly, always polite and gentle. They seemed genuinely concerned about her well-being, not because she could do something for them, but simply because she was a living being who had been in trouble. Dr. Chen visited often, fascinated by Vera 9's physiology, but careful not to make her feel like a test subject. She explained that humans were explorers, traveling through space to learn about other forms of life. "Your people," Chen said during one visit, "they're very different from us. We've been studying their ships from a distance. They seem to have a very organized society." "Yes," Vera 9 said carefully. She was not sure how much she should tell these aliens about Zephyrian culture. "Very organized. Everything has its place." "And what was your place?" Jake asked. He had been visiting every day, sometimes just to sit quietly while she rested. Vera 9 was quiet for a long time. How could she explain to beings who had risked their lives to save a stranger that her own people had thrown her away like garbage? I had no place, she finally said. That is why I was in the pod. Jake and Chen exchanged looks. You were exiled? Chen asked gently. I am defective, Vera 9 said, using the word that had been applied to her so many times. My body grew wrong. I cannot reproduce. In my society, a female who cannot make babies has no value. Jake's face changed, showing an emotion Vera 9 was learning to recognize as anger. But the anger was not directed at her. That's not true, he said firmly. Every individual has value beyond their biological functions. Vera 9 looked at him with confusion. But if I cannot continue the species, what good am I? What do you like to do? Jake asked. What makes you happy? What are you good at? The questions puzzled her. No one had ever asked her such things before. I used to help in the nurseries when I was young, before they realized I was defective. I liked taking care of the children. I was good at calming them when they were upset or frightened. See? Jake smiled. You're a natural caregiver. That's valuable. That's important. But I cannot make children of my own. So, there are other ways to contribute to society, other ways to make a difference in the world. Dr. Chen nodded in agreement. Many humans choose not to have children or cannot have children, but they still live full and meaningful lives. They teach, they heal, they create, they protect others. Biology doesn't define worth. Vera 9 found this concept difficult to understand. Her entire life had been shaped by the belief that reproduction was the only purpose that mattered. These humans seem to think differently about everything. Tell us about yourself, Jake said. Not about what you can't do, but about who you are. So Vera 9 began to talk. She told them about growing up in the lower levels of the ship, about the friends she had lost when they moved to the breeding chambers, and she could not follow. She talked about the books she had read, the music she enjoyed, the quiet moments, when she had felt happy despite her circumstances. The humans listened without judgment. They asked questions that showed they were really paying attention. They seemed interested in her thoughts and feelings, not just her unusual biology. Lieutenant Rodriguez joined them sometimes along with other crew members. They brought stories of their own lives, their own struggles and successes. Vera 9 learned that humans came in many different shapes and sizes, with different abilities and limitations, but they all seemed to find ways to contribute to their society. On Earth, our home planet, Rodriguez explained, we have a saying. It takes a village to raise a child. It means that everyone in a community helps take care of the young ones, not just the parents. Even those who cannot have children of their own? Vera 9 asked. Especially them sometimes, Rodriguez smiled. They often make the best teachers and caregivers because they choose to love and protect children, not because they have to. Days passed. Vera 9 felt something she had never experienced before. She felt wanted, not for what she could do or what she could produce, but simply for who she was. The humans seemed to enjoy her company. They laughed at her observations about their strange customs. They asked for her opinions on things. Dr. Williams, the ship's medical officer, discovered that Vera 9's presence had an unusual effect on the crew. People seemed calmer around her, less stressed, more focused on their work. It might be pheromones, he explained to Jake and Chen, or some kind of bioelectric field. Whatever it is, she has a natural ability to make others feel better, like a natural therapist, Chen mused. More than that, Williams said, looking at his readings. The effects are measurable. Lower blood pressure, reduced anxiety, improved sleep patterns. She's having a real positive impact on everyone who spends time with her. Jake smiled as he watched Vera 9 through the medical bay window. 3 weeks had passed since Vera 9 came aboard the Aurora. She had grown stronger each day, and the humans had made changes to help her feel comfortable. They had adjusted the gravity in her quarters to match what she was used to, and Dr. Chen had worked with the food processors to create meals that were safe and nutritious for her alien biology. But the most important change was not in the ship's systems. It was in the crew themselves. Lieutenant Rodriguez no longer spent her off-duty hours staring out the windows with tears in her eyes, missing her family back on Earth. Instead, she could be found in the common room with Vera 9, talking about their different worlds and sharing stories. The young officer had been struggling with depression and homesickness since the mission began, but those symptoms had almost completely disappeared. Ensign Bobby Clark, the ship's youngest crew member, had been having trouble sleeping ever since they left Earth orbit. The stress of his first deep space mission had given him nightmares and anxiety attacks, but after spending time with Vera 9, listening to her calm voice and feeling her peaceful presence, he was sleeping through the night for the first time in months. Even Chief Engineer Nancy Brown, who was known for her short temper and constant worry about the ship's systems, seemed more relaxed, or she had started joining Vera 9 for meals, and the other engineers noticed that she was less likely to shout when something went wrong. Dr. Williams was fascinated by what he was seeing. He had been quietly monitoring the crew's health since Vera 9 arrived, and the results were remarkable. Across the board, everyone who spent regular time with their alien guest showed improved physical and mental health. "Jake, you need to see this," Dr. Williams said, calling the captain to the medical bay. He pulled up charts and graphs on his computer screen. "Look at these readings." Jake studied the data. "What am I looking at? Stress hormones, blood pressure, sleep quality, immune system function, even digestive health," Williams explained. "Every single measurement has improved for crew members who interact regularly with Vera 9. That seems impossible. I thought so too, but the data doesn't lie. And it's not just coincidence or placebo effect. The improvements correlate directly with time spent in her presence." Dr. Chen joined them, having overheard the conversation. "I've been running my own tests," she said. "There's definitely something unique about her biology. She's producing compounds we don't fully understand yet, but they seem to have a calming effect on human physiology." "Are you saying she's some kind of natural healer?" Jake asked. "More than that," Chen replied excitedly. "I think she's evolved to be a caregiver. Her body produces chemicals that reduce stress and promote well-being in others. Her voice has frequencies that naturally calm the nervous system. Even her presence seems to generate some kind of bioelectric field that makes people feel better." Jake thought about this information, but her own people rejected her because she couldn't reproduce. "That's the irony," Williams said. "They were so focused on one specific biological function that they missed her true gift. She may not be able to create new life in the traditional sense, but she can improve and sustain the lives of others." Later, that day, Jake found Vera 9 in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. This had become her favorite place on the ship, a quiet spot where she could think and watch the universe pass by. "How are you feeling today?" Jake asked, sitting down beside her. "Better than I have ever felt in my life," Vera 9 replied honestly. "Your people have been very kind to me. You've been kind to us too, more than you might realize." Vera 9 looked at him with curiosity. "What do you mean?" Jake chose his words carefully. "We've noticed that people seem happier and healthier when they spend time with you. Our medical officer thinks you have a natural ability to help others feel better." "I do not understand. Do you remember how you said you used to help with the children in the nurseries, that you were good at calming them when they were upset?" "Yes, but that was just being gentle with them. Anyone could do that." "Maybe not anyone," Jake said gently. "Maybe you have a special gift for it." Over the following days, Jake and his officers began to pay closer attention to Vera 9's interactions with the crew. What they saw amazed them. When Ensign Clark had a panic attack during a difficult repair job, Vera 9 simply sat with him and spoke in her calm voice. Within minutes, his breathing returned to normal, and his hands stopped shaking. She did not give advice or try to solve his problems. She just provided a sense of peace and stability that allowed him to handle the crisis. When Engineer Brown was frustrated with a malfunctioning system, Vera 9 offered to keep her company while she worked The engineer found that having the alien nearby helped her think more clearly and approach problems with patience instead of anger. Lieutenant Rodriguez had been having trouble concentrating during her shifts, but after spending her lunch breaks talking with Vera 9, she was performing better than ever. Her reports were more accurate, her responses were quicker, and she seemed genuinely happy for the first time since leaving Earth. It's like she absorbs negative emotions and replaces them with positive ones, Dr. Chen observed. But it doesn't seem to cost her anything. If anything, she seems to get stronger when she's helping others. Dr. Williams nodded. Classic symbiotic relationship. She provides emotional and physical healing, and in return, she gets social interaction and purpose. Jake watched Vera 9 through the window of the common room, where she was playing a simple card game with 3 crew members. All of them were laughing, even Petty Officer Dave Miller, who usually kept to himself and rarely smiled. Her people had it completely backwards, Jake said quietly. They thought she was broken because she couldn't reproduce. But maybe reproduction isn't the only way to contribute to the future of a species. What do you mean? Chen asked. Think about it. If she can improve the health and well-being of those around her, if she can help them be happier and more effective, isn't that just as valuable as creating new life? Maybe more valuable in some ways. Chen considered this. A healthy, stable population might be more important for long-term survival than a rapidly growing one. Exactly. And if there are others like her among the Zephyrians, others who were cast out for being different, how much potential has their society wasted? That evening, Jake called a meeting with his senior staff. He wanted to discuss what they had learned about Vera 9 and what it might mean for their mission. The question is, Jake said to the assembled officers, what do we do with this information? Do we contact the Zephyrian fleet and try to explain what we've discovered? They might not believe us, Rodriguez pointed out. Their entire culture seems built around the idea that reproduction is the only thing that matters. Or they might see it as interference in their internal affairs, added Chief Brown. Some species don't appreciate outsiders telling them how to run their society. Dr. Chen leaned forward. But what about Vera 9? She has a right to know about her abilities, and there might be others like her who are suffering unnecessarily. We should ask her what she wants to do, Jake decided. It's her life and her people. The choice should be hers. The next day, Jake, Chen, and William sat down with Vera 9 to explain what they had discovered. They showed her the medical data, the improved performance reports, and the obvious changes in crew morale since her arrival. You're saying that I make people feel better just by being near them? Vera 9 asked, trying to understand. Much better, Williams confirmed. The effects are measurable and significant. But I am not doing anything special. I'm just being myself. That's exactly the point, Jake said. You don't have to try to help people. It's natural for you. It's part of who you are. Vera 9 was quiet for a long time, processing this information. Finally, she spoke. Among my people, I was called the Hollow One because I could not create life. But you are saying I can sustain and improve life? That's exactly what we're saying, Chen replied. Then perhaps, Vera 9 said slowly, I am not hollow at all. Perhaps I am simply full of something different than what my people expected. Jake smiled. The question is, what do you want to do with this knowledge? Vera 9 looked out the window at the stars, thinking about the ship that had cast her out, about the others who might be suffering as she had suffered, about the possibility that her greatest shame might actually be her greatest strength. I want to show them, she said finally. I want to show my people that there are different ways to be valuable, different ways to contribute, different ways to be complete. Even if they don't listen, even if they reject you again? Vera 9 stood up, her full height making her an impressive figure despite her gentle nature. Then at least I will know that I tried. And maybe, just maybe, I can save others like me from the loneliness I experienced. Jake nodded with respect and admiration. Then we'll help you do exactly that. The alarm bells rang through the aurora as Captain Jake Morrison rushed to the bridge. Lieutenant Rodriguez was already at her station, her face pale as she stared at the sensor readings. "Report," Jake ordered, taking his position in the captain's chair. "Multiple contacts, sir," Rodriguez said, her voice tight with tension. 12 Zephyrian bioships have just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They're surrounding us. Jake looked at the main screen where the alien vessels appeared as glowing, organic shapes against the starfield. The Zephyrian ships looked more like giant sea creatures than the metal spacecraft humans were used to. Their hulls pulsed with angry red light, a clear sign of hostile intent. "They found us," Dr. Chen said quietly from her science station. "Sir," Rodriguez reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the lead ship." "Put it through." The main screen changed to show the interior of a Zephyrian vessel. High Mother Seren Prime appeared, her elegant form radiating authority and anger. Behind her stood other council members, their faces cold and unforgiving. "Human vessel," Seren Prime's voice came through the translator with perfect clarity. "You harbor stolen property of the Zephyrian people. Return the defective one immediately so that she may complete her ordained death." Jake stood up, keeping his voice calm and diplomatic. "High Mother, the individual you speak of came to us near death. We rescued her and provided medical care. She is now under the protection of the Earth Federation." "Protection?" Seren Prime's voice carried disbelief and anger. "You protect a hollow shell? A broken thing that serves no purpose? This proves that humans understand nothing about the natural order." "We understand that every life has value," Jake replied firmly. "Value?" Another council member leaned forward. "What value can a female have if she cannot reproduce? She consumes resources, takes up space, and contributes nothing to the continuation of our species. She is a genetic dead end, a mistake that nature intended to correct." Behind Jake, the bridge doors opened, and Vera 9 entered. She had been listening to the communication from outside, and now she stepped forward to face her former people. The human crew members who had worked with her over the past weeks moved to stand near her, a show of support that was not lost on the watching Zephyrians. "High Mother," Vera 9 said, her voice carrying across space to her birth ship. "I speak to you not as the hollow one you cast away, but as something new, something your understanding cannot accept." Seren Prime's eyes narrowed as she looked at the alien she had condemned to death. "You dare speak to the council? You who are less than complete?" "I am more complete than I have ever been," Vera 9 replied with quiet dignity. "These humans have shown me that there are many ways to contribute to life, many ways to nurture and sustain those around us." Dr. Williams stepped forward holding a tablet with medical data. "High Mother, with your permission, I would like to share some information about what we have discovered." "Discovered?" Seren Prime's voice was mocking. "What could you possibly discover about one of our rejects?" Williams activated his tablet and data began streaming to the Zephyrian ship. Charts, graphs, and medical readings filled the space between them. "This shows the health and performance data of our crew before and after Vera 9 joined us. Every single measurement has improved." The council members looked at the data with growing confusion. "This is impossible," one of them said. "Contaminated. Readings. False information." "It's completely accurate," Dr. Chen added, joining Williams. "Vera 9 has a natural ability to improve the physical and mental health of those around her. She produces compounds that reduce stress, promote healing, and increase overall well-being." "Lies," Seren Prime declared. "The defective one cannot heal others when she herself is broken." Lieutenant Rodriguez stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. 6 months ago, I was barely functional. Depression, anxiety, homesickness so severe, I could barely do my job. After spending time with Vera 9, I feel better than I have in years." Ensign Clark nodded. "I couldn't sleep for weeks before she came aboard. Now I sleep peacefully every night." Chief Brown crossed her arms. "I used to lose my temper every day, yelling at my engineers and making everyone miserable. She helped me find calm I didn't know I could have." One by one, the human crew members shared their stories. Each one told of problems that had seemed impossible to solve, pain that had felt endless, struggles that had nearly broken them, and each one told of how Vera Nine's presence had brought them healing and peace. The council members looked disturbed by these testimonies. Such effects were beyond their understanding of how their biology worked. Even if this is true, Saren Prime said after a long pause, it changes nothing. She cannot reproduce. Without that ability, she serves no purpose in Zephyrian society. But what if reproduction isn't the only way to serve the future of your people? Jake asked. What if keeping your population healthy and stable is just as important as making it larger? You speak nonsense, another council member replied. Only through reproduction can our species continue. Vera 9 moved closer to the screen, her large form commanding attention. Mother Kayla 7, do you remember when I was young? How the nursery worker said I was the only one who could calm the sick children? How they would stop crying when I held them? Kayla 7, who had spoken more gently during Vera 9's trial, looked uncomfortable. Yes, I remember. And Mother Dara 3, do you remember how the elderly in the care centers would ask for me specifically? How they said being near me helped their pain? Dara 3 shifted in her seat. Those were coincidences, natural responses to your size and presence. Were they? Vera 9 asked. Or was my body already showing its true purpose and none of us understood what we were seeing? Dr. Chen activated another display. Hi, Mother. We've run detailed scans of Vera 9's physiology. Her body produces at least 12 different compounds that have healing and calming effects. Her voice generates sound frequencies that naturally reduce stress in most humanoid species. She even has specialized glands that release pheromones, promoting feelings of safety and well-being. Her inability to reproduce isn't a defect, Dr. Williams added. It's a specialization. Her body has evolved to nurture and sustain existing life rather than create new life. Serene Prime stared at the data, her expression unreadable. Even if what you say is true, it does not matter. Our society has no place for such anomalies. Then, maybe your society needs to change, Jake said quietly. The bridge fell silent. Challenging an alien culture so directly was dangerous, but Jake felt the truth needed to be spoken. You would dare tell us how to organize our people? Serene Prime's voice was deadly cold. I would dare suggest that any society that throws away its healers and caregivers might be missing something important, Jake replied. Vera 9 stepped forward again. Hi, Mother, I am not asking to return to the old ways. I am not asking you to pretend I can reproduce. I am asking you to consider that there might be others like me among our people, others who have been cast out or hidden away, because they are different. What are you proposing? Kayla 7 asked, her voice softer than the others. Let me prove what these humans have discovered. Send some of your people here. Let them experience what I can offer. If it is real, if it has value, then perhaps we can find a new way to think about what makes someone useful to our society. The council members whispered among themselves in rapid Zephyrian. The conversation was too quick for the translators to follow, but the tone was clearly one of heated debate. Finally, Saren Prime spoke again. You ask us to risk contamination of our people by this human influence. I ask you to risk learning something new, Vera 9 replied. More whispered discussion followed. Then Saren Prime made her decision. Very well. We will send 3 volunteers, young scientists who can evaluate your claims objectively. But understand this, creature who was once Vera 9. If this proves to be deception or manipulation, the consequences will be severe for both you and your human protectors. Jake nodded formally. We accept those terms, High Mother. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Outside the windows, the Zephyrian ships maintained their positions, waiting to see what would happen next. Well, Rodriguez said finally, that went better than I expected. Or worse, Chief Brown muttered. Now we have to prove that what we've seen is real. Vera 9 looked around at the humans who had stood with her against her own people. Thank you, she said simply, for believing in me when my own kind would not. Jake placed a gentle hand on her arm. Now we just have to make sure we can back up our claims. We will, Dr. Chen said confidently. The truth has a way of speaking for itself. The 3 Zephyrian volunteers arrived on the Aurora 2 days later. They came in a small shuttle, their faces showing the mixture of curiosity and doubt that Captain Jake Morrison had expected. The lead scientist was a young female named Nira 5, followed by 2 males, Keth 2 and Zol 8. Dr. Chen greeted them at the docking bay, having prepared detailed protocols for the visit. "Welcome aboard the Aurora," she said through the translation device. "We're honored by your presence." Nira 5 looked around the metal corridors with obvious distaste. "Your ship is very artificial. Where are the living systems? How do you maintain proper biological balance?" "We use different technology," Chen explained patiently, "but it serves the same purpose as your bioships. Would you like to meet Vera 9 now, or would you prefer to settle in first?" "We will meet the defective one immediately," Nira 5 said coldly. "We are here to evaluate your claims, nothing more." Jake escorted the visitors to the common room where Vera 9 was waiting. She stood when they entered, her large form towering over the smaller Zephyrians. For a moment, none of them spoke. The volunteers stared at her with a mixture of recognition and discomfort. "Hello, Nira 5, Vera 9 said gently. "I remember you from the science levels. You were studying reproductive biology." Nira 5's composure cracked slightly. "Yes, I remember you too. Before you were found to be defective." "I am the same person I always was," Vera 9 replied. "But I have learned new things about myself." Keth 2 stepped forward, his scientific instruments already active. "We will need to run extensive tests. Blood samples, tissue analysis, pheromone detection, bioelectric field mapping." "Of course," Dr. Williams said, joining the group. "We've prepared a full medical bay for your use, but we suggest you also simply spend time with her. The effects are most obvious through normal interaction." Zol 8 looked skeptical. "You expect us to believe that merely being near her will cause measurable changes in our physiology?" "Within hours," Jake said confidently. "Dr. Chen has the baseline readings from when you arrived. We'll compare them to readings taken after. You've spent time with Vera 9. The first day of testing was tense. The Zephyrian scientists ran every scan they could think of, taking samples and measuring everything about Vera 9's biology. They worked with clinical detachment, treating her like a specimen rather than a person. But as the hours passed, something began to change. Nira 5, who had been sharp and impatient when she arrived, found herself speaking more gently. When a piece of equipment malfunctioned, instead of becoming frustrated, she calmly worked through the problem with Dr. Chen's help. Keth 2, who had been nervous about being on an alien ship, gradually relaxed. His hand stopped shaking as he worked, and his voice lost the tight edge of anxiety it had carried when he first arrived. Zol 8 was the most resistant to change, but even he began to show signs of the same calming effect the humans had experienced. His breathing became deeper and more regular, and the stress lines around his eyes started to fade. Dr. Williams monitored all 3 visitors constantly, tracking their vital signs and stress indicators. By the end of the first day, the changes were undeniable. "Look at this." Williams showed the data to Jake and Chen. Nira 5's cortisol levels have dropped by 30%. Keth 2's blood pressure is down, and his immune system activity has increased. Even Zol 8, who's been fighting the effect, shows measurable improvement. On the second day, the Zephyrian scientists began to notice the changes in themselves. Nira 5 mentioned that she had slept better than she had in months. Keth 2 admitted that he felt more focused and clear-minded than usual. Zol 8 remained silent about his own experience, but the others could see that he was less tense. "I don't understand what's happening," Nira 5 confided to Dr. Chen during a break in testing. "My body feels better, more balanced. But this should not be possible." "Why not?" Chen asked. "Because she is defective. Broken. How can a broken thing heal others?" "Maybe she's not broken," Chen suggested. "Maybe she's just different from what your people expected." That afternoon, something unexpected happened. Keth 2, who had been working closely with Vera 9 on bioelectric field measurements, suddenly stopped what he was doing and looked at her with new understanding. "You're not trying to do anything, are you?" he asked. "This healing effect, it's just natural for you." Vera 9 nodded. "I don't know how to turn it off or control it. It's just part of who I am." "But why?" Keth 2 asked. "What evolutionary purpose could this serve?" Lieutenant Rodriguez, who had been observing the test, spoke up. "Maybe evolution isn't just about making more babies. Maybe it's also about keeping the babies you have healthy and happy." Nira 5 looked thoughtful. "In our history, there are stories of certain individuals who were known for their calming presence, healers and peacebringers who could settle disputes and comfort the suffering." "What happened to them?" Jake asked. We assumed they were just good at talking to people. We never considered that there might be a biological component." Zol 8 finally broke his silence. "There could be others like you among our people, others who were cast out because we didn't understand their gifts." Vera 9's eyes brightened with hope. "That's what I want to find out. If there are others suffering, as I suffered, maybe we can help them." On the third day, High Mother Saren Prime contacted the Aurora again. This time her manner was different, less hostile, more uncertain. "I wish to speak with our scientists," she said. Nira 5 stepped forward to address the screen. "Hi, Mother. Our findings are unexpected." "Explain." "The human claims appear to be accurate. The one we knew as Vera 9 does indeed possess biological mechanisms that promote health and well-being in others. The effects are measurable and significant." Saren Prime was quiet for a long moment. "You are saying that a defective individual can heal others?" "I am saying that what we thought was a defect might actually be a specialization," Nira 5 replied carefully. "Her body has evolved for nurturing and sustaining life rather than creating it." Keth 2 added, "Hi, Mother, I have been reviewing our historical records. There are accounts of individuals throughout our past who had similar effects on others. We always dismiss these stories as exaggeration or coincidence. But if they were real," Zol 8 said, "if there have always been individuals like Vera 9 among us, then we may have been discarding some of our most valuable people." Saren Prime looked uncomfortable. "You are suggesting that our fundamental understanding of value and purpose is flawed." "I am suggesting that there might be room for different kinds of value," Nira 5 said diplomatically. Vera 9 stepped forward. "Hi, Mother. I propose a new way forward. Let me return to our people, but not as the Hollow One. Let me work with others who might have similar gifts. Let us see if we can create a new role in our society for those who nurture rather than create. And if you fail, if our people reject this new concept, then at least we will have tried," Vera 9 said. "And maybe over time minds will change." Captain Jake Morrison watched this exchange with deep respect for all involved. Change was never easy, especially for an entire culture. But these beings were willing to consider new possibilities. "Hi, Mother," Jake said. "We would be honored to serve as a meeting place for this new understanding. Our ship could be a neutral ground where Zephyrians like Vera 9 could work alongside our medical staff to develop their abilities." Saren Prime considered this proposal. "You would risk your ship and crew for our outcasts?" "We would risk our ship and crew for beings who have the power to heal and help others," Jake corrected. "That seems like a risk worth taking." 6 months later, the Aurora had been transformed. Half the ship now served as a joint research station where humans and Zephyrians worked together. Vera 9 had become the bridge between the two species. Her official title among her people now Bridge Mother, rather than the Hollow One. 12 other Zephyrians had been found among the outcasts and exiles, all with similar abilities to Vera 9's. They came to the Aurora to learn how to use their gifts and to help both species understand the value of different kinds of contribution. Jake often found Vera 9 in the observation deck, but now she was rarely alone. Beings from both species sought her guidance and presence. She had become exactly what her body had always been designed for, a nurturer and healer who made everyone around her stronger. "Do you ever regret leaving your ship?" Jake asked her one day. Vera 9 smiled, an expression she had learned from the humans. I never left my ship, Captain. I simply found a larger one with room for everyone. The success of the joint station led to permanent cooperation between humans and Zephyrians. Vera 9's story became known throughout both cultures as proof that strength comes not from fitting in, but from embracing what makes each individual unique. She had been cast out for being unable to create life, but in the end, she had created something more valuable, understanding between two species and hope for all those who were different.